All right, welcome to Sass Bites. This is your weekly bite of Sass during your lunch break. I'm your host, Micah Godbolt. You can follow us and catch all of our updates at Sass Bites on Twitter, as well as catch previous episodes at youtube.com/sassbites. And of course, as I start this episode, the cats decide to get up and start moving around. So if you see them, don't worry, it's just a tail. Anyway, this is a kind of a special episode of Sass Bites because it'll probably be my last for a couple weeks. Today would be the last day I'm a father of one. Tomorrow I will be a father of two. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break as we get ready for that. But I've got some exciting stuff to come back to. I don't know how much I want to give away. I'll give away half of it. One of the cool things I'm going to do when we come back in a couple weeks is I've been contacted from by, what's his last name? Chris Schmidt over at CSS DevConf, and he's going to allow me to give away a ticket to CSS DevConf, which is coming up October 13th through 15th. So we're going to be having a little raffle or giveaway or something like that when I come back in a couple weeks. So keep an eye out for that. Follow us at Sass Bites for more information on that once I pull all the details together. So speaking of other conferences coming up, October 2nd through 4th is SassConf. Kind of seems related to this podcast. If you're interested in that, it is sassconf.com. Sorry, my notes are over here. They're also taking speaker submissions up until tomorrow. So if you've been on the fence about getting a submission in, do it. Go ahead and get the submission in regardless. You can always say no if they pick you and for some reason you can't go, but get it in there. That's the only way you can have a chance to do that. So I would definitely suggest doing so. Today we're going to be talking about front-end diffing tools. And if you're not familiar with the front-end diffing tool, you probably haven't been on really large projects yet or have not seen the need for it. Let's explain it this way. When a project gets to a certain size, especially in an agile project where you start with this and then you add a little more, then you add a little more, then you add a little more. Well, once you're in sprint 10, the work you're doing, you want to make sure that that work doesn't screw up sprint 2. Because you've got all this work you've already got done in the can and you've moved on. There's a lot of great tools out there for testing more of like the application and behavioral side of a site. So whether that being making sure that you can create content and add content, and there's the cat other way. So there's behavioral tools out there to make sure that that all works. But what we haven't really gotten in place, and this is current situation and the project on now, is they've got great test coverage about functionality, but they don't currently have any test coverage on styles. So what happens is we're in sprint 9, I think, and we do some work, we get that committed, and we realize that it broke something we did 5 sprints ago. Now that becomes something to do in sprint 10, which that works will break something from sprint 4 or something like that. So the challenge is making sure that the work that you're doing doesn't have a negative impact on the work you've done in the past. And the way that we do this on front end, or at least the way that we're looking to do on the front end, is with a diffing tool. A diffing tool is kind of like Git, where it can find the difference between two things. So the difference between this file and this file is I added these 3 lines. Well, with a visual diffing tool, what we're actually going to be doing is taking a snapshot of the previous build, taking a snapshot of the new build, and then comparing those actual images, just pixel by pixel. So what that's going to allow us to do is realize, like, oh, hey, like this used to be underlined and now it's not underlined. Those pixels changed. Or the color changed from red to green, something like that. Those are the kind of changes we're hoping to be able to catch. Because all sorts of things can happen, whether it's a class name on something changes or the actual style changes. We want to be able to capture those changes and be able to raise that red flag. The idea being that you'll have a build process or a feature process where you create a feature branch, you're making code, and you've got that code ready to commit back into master. It goes through a test process, a behavioral test process, to make sure it doesn't, break the build, make sure it doesn't break content creation, those kind of things. But then also a visual diff will be created. So if I'm just working on, say, the footer, that's what my feature is. I'm making a change to the footer. And we do a visual diff, and we find all these changes in the navigation or in the sidebar and some other content type. Then that raises some red flags that whatever work I did that maybe I thought was not affecting something outside the footer, change a variable or something like that, it actually had an impact on those other parts. So those are the things we want to catch, and those are the tools that I'm going to show off today. I started into this with knowing just a couple, But turns out there's a bunch of these. And as I talk to other people, like, yeah, I'm thinking of rolling my own. I'm like, all right, I'm going to first check out the ones that are out there and get back to you on rolling your own, because that sounds like a ton of work. So I found 4. I know there's a bunch more that I can go into later. But I wanted to see what all the differences were, what the capabilities were, what they could do, how they work differently, because I found out that each one has kind of lent itself to a different workflow. They use different technologies. They are implemented in different ways versus like command line, file-based, actual application that you go to within the browser and those types of things. So hopefully I can give a quick overview as to what each of the 4 are. It's kind of the simple of how to get set up. I'm certainly not going to go into detail about how to get set up. And then kind of show how you create diffs and how you look at the diffs, because I really think that's what differentiates all of them. Once you get it set up, you're good. Differentiators are how you work with them and what kind of result you get in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I've got some notes that I'm going to share once I'm done with this. They'll have a lot of these links, and also kind of even like the steps I'm going through to create this. You won't be able to recreate it perfectly, but at least it'll kind of get you through the steps that I'm using. Actually, I'm going to do the whole desktop, so you will see the notes, because I'm going to show you command line as well. All right, so live demo of 4 different diffing tools. This is where the rubber meets the road. So the first one we're going to take a look at is Phantom CSS. Let's take a quick look at that. Phantom CSS is a CSS regression tool. You can check it out on GitHub. I will have the link for that. One of the unique things about Phantom CSS is it actually allows you to do diffs of individual components on a page. So you're not actually taking a screenshot of the entire page, but rather like individual pieces. And I will show you some of that. To install Phantom CSS, it does require Casper.js, and there's a specific beta that you have to use right now, so be careful of that. It, of course, requires Phantom.js. Most of these are using Phantom or different version of Ghost. What is the other one? I'll get to it at some point. And then the Phantom CSS, which you can either get just downloaded through Git, or you can get through Bower NPM. It's basically just the package of files to run. So let's take a quick look at it. Let's go into Phantom. And yes, all right. So here's our Phantom, and let me give you a quick look at the file that we're going to be doing, which is this guy here. So the way the Phantom's set up, it's file-based, which is nice. So you have an actual like executable file that it tells Phantom CSS what to do. So it can take a URL, it can take viewport sizes, as well as here's all of the different tests it's going to do. This is my old website, my old poor neglected website. So I've got some pretty horrible class names in here. But I'm going to take a look at the three column left, the portfolio, the header, and the blog. And interesting enough, there's a bunch of blog, because it's actually like a blog teaser. There's a bunch of them, and it will actually do the first one it finds. So if you have a repeated content, it'll just do one of them, which is nice. You don't have to worry about what happens when there's a bunch of them on the page. It's not going to diff every single one of them. So let's look at what that's going to take to do. And in this case, it's Casper.js test, and it's going to, you basically pass in where that JavaScript file is, the JavaScript file that that defines the project. And I can go ahead and run that. And you can see it's going to run a bunch of stuff and kind of give us some feedback as to the result. And in this case, you're going to see some fails. And the reason it's failing is because I've already ran this once in a kind of like a normal state of my website. And I've got that loaded in and accepted, and I'll show you acceptance here in a little bit. So what I'm doing now is I made changes to the site, and then now I'm going to run the diff again. And basically what it's showing is, hey, there's changes on these sites. Like you expected these things to be the same, they're actually different. And so that's kind of the workflow that it uses. So one thing that's not so wonderful, I guess, about Phantom CSS, it really doesn't have much of a front end. So really all we have is, this is just diving into the pointed map at the folder. So here in our screenshots, you can see we've got the left sidebar here. We've got the left sidebar fail that's showing the diff. And then this diff is actually the new one. So the difference is these links have changed colors, and there's actually some extra padding in there. So you can actually see that in the diff in this fail. As you can see, like that Micah Godbolt's been pushed down, and all of these are highlighted because the colors have changed. So that's what it allows you to do. The hero has not changed. So there's hero normal, and here's hero on the diff. So the hero is identical, and if you look down the test, I believe it's going to show that that one worked fine. So I really like Phantom CSS because it allows you to do this. It allows you to actually do component by component. I know this is something that I think the guys at Diffuse, sorry, are looking to implement as well, because it allows you to, and I'll show you what happens is when you have those vertical changes, it just kills everything below it. Like everything below it's a diff because all those pixels have shifted. So this solves some of that and allows you to basically do diffs on those individual elements, which is really helpful when you have a large site, when maybe you're trying to do a diff on your style guide or something like that, which is really handy. So again, so like this blog teaser, you can see it's hard to see here because it's all of where this little pink is. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Those have changed colors, so it's flagging those as changed colors. So that's Phantom CSS. It's pretty simple. Running it just requires a single JavaScript file, and it does everything for you. You don't have to spin up any servers or anything. But the outcome of it is pretty simple. You get folders full of images. You could write stuff on top of this to view those a little bit better, but it's just not there. You can write yourself. All right. So we can CD properly. Next one we're going to do is Diffuse. So here's the Diffuse, github.com/diffuse. Now, Diffuse is pretty sweet. It's a Rails app. So there's going to be a bit of a setup process, and there's also a few servers that you have to end up running. But it does give you a great outcome when you can get it going. This is probably the project that I had the most trouble with getting set up. But also the maintainers and developers of it are extremely good. I just made a random tweet about how I was having problems with it, not even like tweeting at them or anything. They picked it up, asked what kind of problems I had. They took feedback and then gave me some answers that were able to help me get through it. So really good support on that. There's a repo that you clone down, as well as you need ImageMagick, Redis, and then when you do a bundle install, that's going to go and grab all the other gems because there's tons of them. So the other thing about this is there's like 3 different things you spin up. So it's kind of ridiculous, but whatever. So there's a Redis server. I'm not familiar with Ruby, so I just run it. And of course, oh, that one's already used. I thought I had a good port there. I was having some port issues, as you can tell. Trying to find ports that weren't already taken up by other stuff running. Oh well, I found that just as long as you find an unused port, it's able to work without a problem, without any additional changes set up. All right, and then we're going to actually run the Rails app, and of course, oh, good old RVM is. I'm going to be switching back and forth a couple times. I just know it. I've also been having fun with. Oh, really, come on. It's one of those things where you test the day before and everything's working perfectly, and then of course it all falls down. Why does it need Sass 3.2? So let me talk about Diffuse real fast. What else can I say about Diffuse? So Diffuse takes the regular approach of doing a screenshot of the entire page and doing diffs of that. So while that's going, let me go ahead and jump over. Oh, actually, it's just hopefully it'll be done really quick. Bundle is complete. So let's try this one more time. And that looks good. All right. That's the joy of bundle install. It just goes out and grabs all the gems for you. All right, and then there's also Sidekick, which is I believe it's a tool that's used to basically spin up little workers that help do all the work faster. All right, and hopefully that means that we're good. Ha ha ha! Live debugging, I love it. All right, so as you can see, one thing about Diffuse, it has a really nice UI. You'll be spending more of your time in here. I think, let me see, they might have a way of, yeah, you can actually trigger sweeps with a curl command. So if you do need to automate this into more of a command line process, you can do that. If you'd rather do it in a GUI, obviously you can do that too. So the way it works is you create new sweeps, and I can just show that real quick so you can see what this looks like. Add a new project, give it a name, tell the viewports, and tell the URLs. Now, one thing about Diffuse that's different about some of the future ones is they always assume the same URL. So it's basically old build versus new build. So it's not like compare this site with this site. It's compare what it used to be with what it is now. And the cat's moving around, so you might hear some meowing. All right. So let's go over to this one I did previously, and let's take a quick look at it. As you can see, I think these are the baseline ones. They're accepted, yes. And then here are okay, those are accepted, and you can actually see a diff here. Okay, so this is what happens with the diff once you do a sweep. I won't worry about doing one because I did one earlier today when I was testing when everything worked. And you can see with this, it's done a diff of the entire page. You can see on that sidebar how the links have changed color. You can also see the before and after, which is nice. So you can see the links change color, and the header pushed everything, or sorry, yeah, that header pushed everything down a little bit. So you can see we have a diff here. We've got some diffs with another links, and then on the sidebar. Now, you see everything is pink, so everything is different. Well, it's not everything's actually different, it's just that headers push the pixels down, so the pixels don't match up any longer. And that's one of the things that Phantom CSS can help out with a little bit, is if you're just testing individual components, you're not worried about that component getting moved up or down, you're just worried about that component actually being the same before and after. So this is what you get, and you can see the difference of it, and then you can say, oh yeah, that's fine, that's what I expect it to be, and you can hit accept. And what that accept does is says, okay, this is now the new gold standard. This after, this right here, this is now what we're going to test against next time that I run this build. So that's kind of the process, is you have like this kind of one workflow of build after build after build, and you keep comparing them and getting new diffs and accepting those before you move on to the next one. So it's a bit of a linear workflow, which might work great for you or might not. And I know in our case, I don't think it would, because we so often have like 5 or 6 dozen whatever different things are trying to get merged in at the same time. We want to be able to test those individually against that standard versus having to basically test them in linear order. All right, so this is the new one, DPXDT. I think it stands for something. I can't recall exactly what it is. Depicted. Sure. Okay. Depixelid. Whatever. And this is one that I saw actually just recently. It was probably the most recent one that I've checked out. And it works pretty nice. It has a UI, and it works kind of similar to Diffuse, but it's a very different process. It was really easy to set up. It just has a couple of dependencies, and it's all command line based. So let's take a quick look at how that works. So depicted. All right, I'm going to kill all these guys. No, this one. Okay. So diff depicted. There we go. So in here, in depicted, it's basically you need Phantom.js, Image Magic. You just clone the repo down and update submodules. This was kind of a fun one because it used the Git submodules tool, which it's kind of like bundle install with a gem, where you download something, you run bundle install, it goes and grabs everything. Submodules is the same thing, where it's got its own repo, but it has all these dependencies where when you update all of the submodules, it pulls all those in, sucks all those into the folder, which is nice. And it runs off all these little shell commands, which again, it's just a completely different approach. But it's all command line based, and it worked pretty simply once I got everything in there. So we run this shell command, and it spins up a whole bunch of stuff that, don't worry about it. Then what we do is we've got this other shell command that we can pass values into. Now, one thing about this when you go into the docs is that there's a bunch of different kind of like workflows, and that kind of shows a difference. Like if you want to diff between different sites, or if you want to do pair diffs, diff my images, you can just toss images into it. So there's a lot of different ways you can actually use this tool, which is quite nice. It all depends on how and what you pass into here. So I'm going to update build ID of 1 is the name of the build. So it's able to kind of do that same, like, each build step, and you can have multiple different. You might have a different app for mobile versus desktop, or maybe have you can use this tool for different builds and view them separately, and they won't like clash, which is nice. So we're going to diff between my local setup and my live setup, and I will toss this in, and you can see it's going to hopefully run properly. Hey, looks like it did. Gives me the URL right here to view that diff, and let's take a look at it. All right, so not quite as fancy as Diffuse, but it's very similar. And again, it's kind of mark this release as good, mark this release as bad. And the data's pending, so it's actually still running. So let me look at an old one that I've done, and hopefully it's done. Here we go. Hey, look at that. So we've got kind of the same thing going on. We can see the before, and we can see the after. Oh, the after, sorry. Yeah, before and after is actually kind of reversed, just because of what order I put them in. So here's what the site used to look like. Here is the changes I made with the different colored links and a little bit more margin, and you can see the diff again. So very, very similar. Very similar output, also same GUI, approve the differences, so on and so forth, and you can kind of work through your build process and say, like, if I do this one, I say approve this, mark this release as good, and I go back, and you can see this is a good one. Haven't played with it a bunch. We can certainly dive into this deeper and kind of show like what a full workflow is going to look like. But this is DPXDT or depicted. And that's how that works. So we're doing good on time, 12:20. Let's go ahead and dive into one more because 3 is not enough. But I'm sure that Wraith, I think that's why I had to switch back over my RVM. So let's go ahead and click on the right buttons. Here we go. Wraith. All right. This is a fun one. This is actually the first one I jumped into. It was very simple to set up. I really had no problem with getting it going. It required ImageMagick, Phantom.js, or Slimer.js. That was the other one I was looking for. Phantom.js is a headless browser that basically is a WebKit browser that doesn't actually have a head. It doesn't actually have an actual GUI. There's no actual page that opens up. It's able to just create the page, basically render the page, and take a picture of it is what that allows you to do. Slimer.js is a Gecko version of it, so if you need to be able to test for Firefox as well, you can do that for the Gecko engine. And then there's a Wraith gem. And you just pull the gem down, and you're good to go. Now, in this case, there's actually some missing functionality with the standard Wraith gem. So I just pulled down the Git repo and have been running off that. So it's going to be a slightly different process. If you're just running off the gem, you're just going to use Wraith capture and then the name of your configuration file, and I'll show you that file in just a little bit. But in my case, I am not doing that. So there's a Rake command that allows you to do the same thing. It's just different packaging, so it's not an actual gem. So let's take a quick look at that, and I'll show you what that file looks like. Because Wraith is probably my favorite tool as far as how the setup goes, because it's all run off a YAML file. So this YAML file, you can obviously have multiple of them, one for each of your different projects or something like that. This YAML file will define what gets checked during the diffing process. And you can see we're using the Phantom.js. We could also have one for Gecko and just do that one as well and have both of them. I don't know if you can have them both at the same time. Anyway, what snap file? So there's snappings for pictures. So this is kind of extensible. You can do some stuff on top of it. But here's the meat and potatoes: is domains. So again, we have my local and my remote. So I can set those up, and I can have multiple. I can have 3 or 4 if I really wanted to. Set my screen widths. And also paths, and you can do multiple paths. I'm just doing the home page, but you could do dozens of paths. And the idea with this would be that we would have we have say a dozen content types and a bunch of views and a bunch of blocks. we want to have an example of each of those listed here. So when we do a test, even though I'm just working on, say, like the event view or the event node, it also runs tests on a blog page, and runs tests on a photo gallery, and run tests on all these other things, so that you can make sure there's no diffs in those other ones as well. So that's kind of the idea behind it. You'd populate that with a whole bunch more, and you can also change names. Obviously, this is from an old setup where wasn't actually supposed to be called customers. This also has a fuzz amount. So you can pass some of your parameters into ImageMagick and some of your other tools. ImageMagick can take a fuzz parameter, which is basically like, don't pick up anti-aliasing, like if one's slightly rendered differently from another one, like just get the big differences kind of stuff. And you can play with that amount to see what works for you. Okay, so that is that. So let me go ahead and run this. And we'll see. I do think I need to jump over to, let's do, no. I swear, every time I change Ruby versions, let's just see if this works on this. So, Rake. Oh, okay. So far so good. We'll see if it does the whole thing. So you can see it's snapping through all the local at all those different breakpoints. It's snapping through all of the remote at those breakpoints, cropping the images down, saving the diffs. Gotta love good feedback. All right, good. We're good with this version of Ruby, so we're good to go. And it generates the thumbnails and it's done. So what this tool actually does is it actually puts everything into there's no server spun up. There's no like Ruby application running in the background to view all of this. It's simply there is a Wraith gallery. There's a gallery template that just runs through all of the elements and creates a gallery for you, so you can view the gallery. And that's how the process goes. It also creates a text file with the difference, so the actual percentage diff, so you can actually see what those diffs are. If we go into shots, here it is. So you can see in customers, so this is the customers was the name of the page that I gave it. Again, probably not the right name for it, but you can tell you can have multiple names, so each one's going to have its own set of files, and you can see like the diff in here is 3.2%, and here's the two different images. So it does this exact same thing of like, here's the remote, here's the local, here's the difference, and it shows those differences. So you can see the difference here, you can see the images there, and all those kind of things. Now, of course, this is kind of ugly. This is a pain in the butt to look through in your code editor or within a just within your Finder. So they do that. Having that gallery spin that together allows you to view it a little bit nicer. So I've set up a quick little pointer to my Wraith folder, and I can click on the gallery. And I use Bootstrap. There, it kicks in. Okay, I need to fix that layout. So anyway, so this is the build that you get. So you actually get to see all of them. You get to see the names of it. You can have multiple screenshots down the left. You have the different sizes right here, so you can see see what it looks like and the differences at each of the breakpoints, as well as the local, remote, and the diff. Now, what it came with, and I need to replicate this by just going into the value. What it came with is when you click on it, you actually just jump to the actual image. It was just a link to the image itself, which for me was really annoying because then you have to go to the next one and click on the next one and view it, and there wasn't a good way to A/B and see the difference between all of them. So, so a little bit of hacking that I did was a little bit of JavaScript that just pulled everything together and made a little bit of a UI. And ironically, I made this UI and built it almost this exact same way, or built it exactly like this before I started using these other tools, realizing the other tools did the exact same thing, where they have local, or they have remote, and they have the diff. So it makes it really easy just to jump through all of them. These are big screenshots. There we go. So here's the local, here's the remote, here's the diff, and you're able to pop through those and see what the differences are. And if those differences are fine, then you can go ahead and commit those in. So this doesn't really have like a built-in like accept and confirm and base state and those kind of things. The way I'd see this being used especially in the project we're in right now, where we have feature branches, and then we have kind of like our stable our stable testing environment, kind of like our staging server before it actually goes to production. What we want to do is we test our branch versus that staging. The staging site, and see if there's any differences. And the thing is, you expect to see differences if you're working on the front end. You expect the work that you do to have a visual difference. What this tool is going to be useful for is, where are those differences occurring? Are they happening just in the areas you expected, or are they happening on other pages that you didn't expect those to come in? And that's really what the key of this is for. Like with unit testing and behavioral testing, like a failure is a bad thing because everything is supposed to pass. This is more of a tool to see what those differences are, to make sure that what you changed are the only differences, and there's not more differences that you didn't expect. So those are the 4 tools that I've gone so far. I just came across, someone mentioned Hardy.io, which is another one for me to jump into, automated CSS testing. And then there's also there's a great tool, or a great site. Kevin Lamping was nice enough to send this over to me. It's kind of a rundown on a lot of these. CSSTE.st that runs down a lot of these tools and talks about them and gives links to them. So if you want to just dive in like crazy deep to these, here's another place that you can go. So that's it. 4 of them tested live. Nothing completely broke. I feel really good about that. So they're very different. There's lots of different tools that have different workflows, that have different interfaces, and that have different features. But they're also all open source projects. I do have in the show notes, and you can actually see in the show notes down here that I've got a GitHub repo that I will send out if you want to take a look at this with Wraith. It's exactly the same as Wraith. It just has a little bit extra JavaScript, and I've updated that gallery gallery template. So if there's changes that you think you can contribute to some of these projects, they're all open source. They're all taking pull requests. They all want to improve their workflow. So find one that you really like and get involved with it. Get in contact with the maintainers and see what you can do to help improve that, especially so you can make it work better for your workflow. Because oftentimes it works great for what they do, but your workflow, the team that you have, and how that process goes might mean that you need some different tools or some different functionality out of it. So for me, I think Wraith is kind of winning because it allows me to simply set up 2 servers and do a diff between those and get that kind of sanity test to make sure that my changes are happening in the places that I expect them to. So it looks like I had at least one question come in. Oh, there's another... another site to take a look at, because you can never have too many. Siteeffect.io. Let me bring that up. Siteeffect.io. More regression testing for the web. So lots of them out there. I mean, the thing is, the tools are out there, like Phantom.js, Snap.js. What are some of these other ones they used? Image Magic for doing the comparisons. You could roll your own really easily if you really wanted to go down that path. So take a look at these tools, see if one gets close enough for you to be able to use it, maybe work with it and help, or take a lot of what they're doing, some of the ideas, and you can roll your own. Apparently that's really easy and popular these days. So anyway, that's half hour of diving into 4 different visual regression testing tools. Again, I am going to be having a baby. Well, I'm not having a baby. Our family's going to be added to by one tomorrow. So I'm certainly going to be taking a little bit of time off. But when I come back, I am going to have a giveaway, and I'll probably do it before the episodes. So like my comeback episode, I'll announce the winner for a ticket to CSS DevConf coming up in October. So check out CSS DevConf. Also check out SassConf. Get your submission in before tomorrow. And I do have a couple more surprises, hopefully once I get those solidified down. But hopefully see you back in a couple weeks, let's say 2 weeks, maybe 3, kind of depending on how things go. But thanks for just checking out. This is episode 40. It's kind of cool. Coming up on 52, which will be fun to get that year under my belt. So we will catch you later. If you have more, I'm going to actually keep adding to this doc. So if you got more visual regression testing tools out there, tweet them at me, send them to me. I'll add them to this doc and we'll just keep going with it. And maybe I'll have to have a follow-up one with 4 or 5 more of them I've tried out. So again, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Later.